something more original.
Hello, everyone. Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're watching us from. Thank you all for joining us for day 3 of the Extra Innovation Week. So, day 1 was awesome, day 2 was superb, day 3 will be extra, extra, extra awesome. So, thank you so, so much for sparing us your time. Today, we have Amir, an amazing guy who's into XR for health and neuroscience, if I'm correct. And also, Jennifer is going to do her wonderful, wonderful magic by introducing Amir to the rest of the world. So take it from there.
Thanks, Arome. Hello, everyone. Today is going to be a great day. I'm looking forward to all the great speakers we have. We're starting off with Amir Bozorgzadeh. He is a founder and CEO at Virtually, a VR startup that unlocks neuroscience with virtual reality to help pharmaceutical companies accelerate the approval of drugs designed to treat cognitive illnesses like Alzheimer's disease. Previous to Virtually, Amir founded Game Guys, a mobile game studio based in Dubai, and Time Durham, the first social impact startup to introduce time banking to the Middle East. He is an alumni of York University and the Think School of Creative Leadership. Amir is a contributing writer to tech blogs like VentureBeat and TechCrunch on the topics of emerging tech, spatial computing, and startup ecosystems. Can't wait to hear what Amir is going to share with us. He's got a wealth of knowledge. Amir, take it away.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be on conversations like this with creators from regions that I don't have a personal connection to yet. And so I'm really happy to see that there's an event like this that is rallying the VR community and the augmented reality community. And because this is the time where in a post-pandemic world, virtual reality gets to shine in so many ways. It's definitely been accelerated by the biblical plague in more ways than one. Regulatory bodies on the healthcare side, where I'm certainly positioned in, and particularly also education. This is where we're seeing a lot of more welcoming, embracing hands from regulatory bodies, from institutions that are otherwise quite, not stubborn, but a little bit hard to convince to embrace emerging technologies like spatial computing and their intersection with technologies like big data, AI learning tools, any buzzword you can think of. Everything is now being more and more welcomed. My background is, as mentioned, I was a market researcher initially, raised and had my upbringing and early career in Canada, Vancouver specifically. I was a market researcher, hundreds and hundreds of A/B testing and quantitative studies. And then I moved into, during my time in Dubai, as a games publisher and then a tech writer who increasingly covered the intersection of virtual reality with serious use cases. Now, I'm not someone who is writing because I wanted to be a writer. I was writing because I was trying to research and find what are the critical use cases for virtual reality, because there aren't as many as people sometimes want to imagine. And that's, something that we have to always keep in mind as serious people in this industry, keep our eyes wide open and understand what is mainstream, what isn't mainstream, and not drink the Kool-Aid so much. What is a critical use case where virtual reality ultimately serves as a solution in a way that no other digital format could ever achieve, ever provide. And that is, from my point of view and from all the articles I've written based on a lot of research and a lot of interviews during the time from 2015 until about 2019 when I started not writing anymore. Those are the two categories: it's education and healthcare. And in particular, I'm going to share my screen now and give you a run through of our company. But Virtually is essentially my discovering a critical use case, and at the intersection of the neurosciences and virtual reality, or better said, how does virtual reality unlock the neurosciences, and specifically to address the huge negative impact that cognitive disorders have on society, both in terms of their impact on the quality of life of individuals, for example, who, let's say you're past 50 and you're starting to subjectively notice your memory loss, and you start freaking out that maybe you're going to deteriorate and get a horrible condition like Alzheimer's disease, which has no cure, has no solution. We can only hope that we don't get it. And if and when we do, pharmaceutical drugs can only manage the symptoms. And yet we also know that cognitive illnesses like Alzheimer's disease can be detected up to 20 years before they onset by using neuroimaging or brain scans. If you were to be able to get into a hospital and get yourself into one of those giant machines, fMRI machines, you could be able to actually detect the functional and structural changes in the brain associated to a natural deterioration towards a cognitive illness that many years before. And there's a lot of companies using, different types of technologies to assess us more regularly, assess us more easily. Something that the earlier we can detect these things, these indicators of early deterioration, means that earlier we can intervene, and at the very least, the more chance we have to delay the clinical onset of these kind of conditions. And so, cognitive assessment tools are the first line or the foundation of being able to do these things. And for the last couple of decades, it's been quite remarkable that smartphones can be able to, everyone has a smartphone in their pocket, so it's maximum accessibility, and they can have these tools. But ultimately, these screen-based formats fail to track and engage our whole body. And that's where VR comes in. It's the first digital format that actually triggers my autonomic nervous system, my vestibular balance system, my proprioception into believing that the experience is real. And so if I am standing in a simulation, standing on top of a very tall tower, then my phobia of heights doesn't care that some part of me knows I'm in my living room. My phobia of heights is triggered. My knees shake. I tremble. If a spider comes by me and I have a phobia of heights, it will react. And so there's an amazing book called VRX, published, 6 months ago by Dr. Brennan Spiegel of Cedars-Sinai, citing 5,000 studies to date on the healthcare applications of virtual reality. And the FDA has created a new category called medical extended reality. They had a public workshop dedicated to VR last year. They have the first VR for pain management designated as breakthrough device by Applied VR and their EaseRx product. So it's exploding right now, and exactly when we need it during this post-pandemic world. And our company, our niche is cognitive assessment and training, taking standardized, commonly assessed tools and liberating them back into a 3D rendered environment where our VR games have been designed by neuroscientists to test and train a range of cognitive abilities, not just the main standard categories like memory and information processing and problem solving, but also motor control, spatial orientation, and spatial audio awareness. And we make all of that data accessible in our enterprise platform. And particularly, you have to think about the killer feature of VR for healthcare, which is really, really centered on the volumetric data sets that are generated. So 3 minutes of our closed loop games generates about 200,000 data points. We know whether you're hitting the ball with your front hand, your backhand, whether you're standing or sitting. We can detect the subtle shaking and hand trembling. This kind of stuff is game changer, order of magnitude, if not 2 orders of magnitude, more data being captured about the human condition than any other digital format. And why is that important? Well, in the intersection of our technology and our solution and our data sets with AI learning tools, we can actually work on creating what we call a digital phenotype or a digital health biomarker, where our VR gameplay, if you were to play it regularly, could detect subtle patterns that would serve as a non-invasive way to correlate to what you would otherwise find in an fMRI machine. That's the future we're talking about, where gameplay, your personal gameplay, scientifically driven, could actually empower you to add this kind of experience into your lifestyle. And so not be able to be, shocked 10, 20 years later when something has happened, maybe be able to get that kind of insight much, much earlier on, not by going to a huge fMRI machine or something that's invasive, but something through a non-invasive digital biomarker that correlates. And so as of right now, we're not an MVP. We're not proof of concept. We have about 16,000 early users who've registered and stress tested the 11 games that we've created to date that test and train a range of cognitive abilities across these 7 core cognitive categories that we have here. But we also have a game scoring system, a universal one called the Enhanced Performance Index that gives you a weighted sort of IQ score per game, per category, and then ultimately a universal EPI score. This scoring system actually doesn't categorize each game according to these like main categories, but actually subtypes or children categories. Like for memory, we have working memory, short-term memory, long-term memory, and so on. And the back-end system is what we're working with research partners, as well as on the commercialization side, to really leverage for our business model and also for the work relating to the volumetric data sets and creating digital biomarkers. This kind of back-end tool is very sophisticated. It's designed in close collaboration with our AWS partners, where it's strictly HIPAA compliant, as we should expect to be. And it has features like remote control that allows you as a partner to be able to remote navigate the experience for patients. Perhaps someone is disoriented, doesn't want to remove the headset. Well, with our companion app, you can be able to remote navigate the whole experience from login to games to reporting on behalf of the user. We also have playlist feature that allows certain people who may want to maybe, let's say, assess cognitive health for someone who has multiple sclerosis. They want to use a certain battery or certain number of games in specifically, not the whole general battery. And so how do we stand apart from, all the companies out there who do what we do? Well, the first row is about, traditional pen and paper neurological tests. Maybe they're in 2D screen-based formats, or the 2D brain training apps, which we would call, because they don't have VR and they don't have embodied, ecologically valid multi-sensory experiences as virtual reality offers. We call them brain teaser apps, and then you have the companies who typically are offshoots of universities. They've really plateaued at an MVP stage. No one's really come to the level that we have in terms of just bleeding and struggling to this level of advancement in terms of a very exhaustive library of cognitive assessment games, except for one company called Neurotrainer that, well, they're very focused on, athletic conditioning and sports training, not generalized to general brain health. And we're, another thing that stands us apart is the number of research partnerships we have across the US and Europe, and some opening up also in Asia. There's actually a few more that are missing on this list. These are research partners, like, for example, Val d'Hebron. They're focused in Barcelona. They're actually recruiting for our first study this month, where their focus is type 2 diabetes patients, because that is a high risk factor towards cognitive deterioration. UCSF, along with the VA healthcare system, they're focused on traumatic brain injury, and addiction is a high risk factor. So they're all focused on different cognitive domains, and we at our technology enabling those studies and those research teams focusing on using our next generation cognitive assessment tool and next generation data collection tool for these various cognitive issues and disorders. And with studies beginning, as of this month running, and all sorts of other studies planned to begin this year. Our team is a mix of scientists and game developers. Hossein and myself, we've been working together for over 9 years. Florencia has recently come on board as our chief science officer with a background in Alzheimer's research and biomarkers. And Nelson Dellis is a sort of, actually is a celebrity of sorts on our end. He's a two-time author of memory technique books, a 4-time USA memory champion. You can find him on the Netflix documentary Memory Games. What I'm going to do right now is share a video that ultimately I'm not sure will stream so great, but let's just see. However much, you can always go and view this video yourself. But ultimately, every time you log in as a user, you indicate the number of hours you slept and your mood from a 5-point scale. And our backend system is actually designed to even get raw data from biosensors, like have your Fitbit watch integrated, all those things. Because of course, real data is much more important and significant than self-reported, but at least by default, we're getting self-reported data. But every time you log in, you play 3 games from our library, and that's your daily cognitive workout. This game called React, it's a modified Stroop test, one of very, very commonly used assessment tools, into 3D rendered environment where you have 2 paddles and you're hitting the objects based on shape and color into the respective portals, which will intermittently switch sides, requiring you to do task switching as a skill. You have a vestibular balancing game. You have 2 plates in your hands, balls dropping down based on certain color combinations that you have to match and hit the requirements before they fall off the plates. We have a game here based on the research of the University of Cambridge. Dr. Barbara Sahakian and her team found that this episodic memory training game, which is a type of long-term memory in category, if you were to play this game, they found that it increased neural activity in the region of the brain associated with schizophrenia. And they found that with regular longitudinal playing of this game, the actual symptoms of schizophrenia began to abate. So you have another point of view of what these kind of games are kind of serving as, a gym for the mind, and being able to address, certain types of cognitive disorders associated to, let's say, depressive states, which correlate to a lack of neural activity in those parts of the regions of the brain. Can we use games like this to flex those brain muscles and be able to address our cognitive health in that way? The last thing I'm going to show you is the back-end system. As I mentioned, we have about 16,000 early users registered, stress testing our system. We have users about 50 to 100 coming in every day and just finding us organically. We don't market it or anything. Of course, we collect, for research purposes, demographic data like education, profession, and so on. But this system is really for leveraging it with our research partners in order to better understand and use us for studies that are about tackling and better understanding the data side of cognitive disorders of every kind, from ADHD to autism to TBI to ones specifically addressed relating to conditions like when you are in chemotherapy, you get a memory. 70% of people who do chemotherapy get a memory fog. COVID, unfortunately, is increasingly associated to cognitive impairment. So we want to work with partners where we give this access to them and they can use it however they see fit. And we try to increasingly make it as flexible and add the kind of features and reporting features and export features that makes this really, really as practical as possible for them. And I think with that, I'll end my talk and open it up to questions.
Fantastic, Amir. Go ahead, Arome.
I said awesome. I wish you could not stop, but due to time, I know, right? It's amazing. My question is, sorry, I don't know if it's right, but is the solution live? Can people actually download it and, if possible, subscribe to it?
So it's available for pretty much every 6DoF headset right now. It's on all the major app stores. For the Quest, which is actually 98% of the people who download and use us, we've never been able to make it on the Quest store, funny enough. So we're on SideQuest. We should be on App Lab Link in the next few weeks. I know the people at Oculus, they only have like 3 people managing the curation, and we're not as sexy as killing zombies. So it's hard to get on there sometimes for applications like us. But we should be available directly for the Quest very soon. And if you have a Quest, SideQuest is very easy to download from.
Awesome. Any Jennifer?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, I have tons of questions, Amir. We won't be able to get to all of them today. You and I need to connect at some point. But firstly, I want to say, really, really pleased to see the connection between emerging tech and meaningful data that can really impact someone's life. There's so much going on in the space, and one of the things that I'm always cognizant of is how we are actually using the tech to make a significant difference. And so I appreciate you sharing that with us. Have a series of questions around that. I'll try to limit some of them, but interesting to hear you talk a little bit with regards to the volumetric data that you're collecting. I know a lot of us in the space are working on data standards and things to help us all kind of deal with that volumetric data in an ecosystem in a more user-friendly way. I'd love to hear a little bit with regards to how you're handling that challenge around those data points and how you're rolling those up into something meaningful that you can then either correlate to a condition, correlate to the self-reported data that you're getting, correlate to trends. What is that looking like for you all? How are you finding that? And then on top of that, how are you finding the AI elements with regards to managing and processing and gaining insights from that data?
It's a really tricky question, as it should be, because the buzzwords of big data have started to get a little bit fall on deaf ears, because what is data? A lot of it can be noise. What is noise? So in relation specifically to the context of a cognitive assessment tools such as we have it built into all of the clinical protocols of the studies that are coming up as a standard feature to correlate our solution to standardized methodologies, the pen and paper neurological tests, but of course also biomarkers. On the Barcelona study that's beginning recruitment this month, on the type 2 diabetes, we have it built in to have correlation to fMRI, brain scans, neuroimaging. And so if we can correlate the big data to what we can see in the functional structural changes seen in those scans associated to people who do have high risk factors or subjective memory cognitive impairment, that's when the hunting begins, and AI comes in to find the pattern recognition. And so it really is a treasure hunt right now. It's not about us having found out anything yet. I think that's the most ambiguous part of the road ahead. We are working with partners, really powerful is the wrong word, but partners that have powerful, sophisticated resources or tools under their belt. For example, we're in discussions with HP. They have, I think, under the radar to a lot of people is the fantastic device that they're about to launch that has integrated biosensors like pupil dilation tracking and heart rate variability, and maybe upcoming next year or end of this year, perhaps even skin conductivity. And we're going to be working with their OmniSet AI and their VR device very closely to see if that can even further help us correlate our solution to calculated biometric insights that they have set up in their AI system called, for example, cognitive load, or maybe later on they're going to have an inference engine that can actually calculate your emotional state, or at least your stress state, because you can pick up on a lot of these kind of things. And the thing about it is we want to be able to correlate our solution ultimately to biomarkers like fMRI machines, like EEG, but also I think increasingly more important is also always tied down to physiological states. And can we correlate, cognitive performance across these categories to your physiological state? So it's a really tricky thing, but it's the most exciting part, but it's also the most ambiguous part. And investors and partners can be sometimes, depending on if they share your vision, dissuaded from by it or excited by it. And that's the hard part, to find people and allies who will support us on that hunt together.
Absolutely. And you've kind of highlighted, I think, a tricky challenge that we're all really interested in, and some of us are working pretty hard around. So that's pretty neat to hear you talk about that. Interestingly, you mentioned certain conditions. Alzheimer's came up a lot in your presentation, as well as some of the others. What are the early kind of studies showing? Are you learning things around brain patterns and things like that, cognitive performance that you didn't expect as some of these individuals are going through the experience?
It's been we were a team of about 11 people full time, very light on, we can only afford so many scientists to come on board with specialties in certain areas. But more importantly, we need, right now we're raising funds to get data scientists on board, people who can help us dig into the data more, the data that we already have and sitting on. We know, for example, in our early, very superficial digging into the data, that people who, typical things like we see already in previous research, like, for example, if you sleep less than 6 hours, typically there's an inverted U-shape correlation to your cognitive performance, at least in certain ways. Like if you sleep too little or if you sleep too much, typically you see a drop in cognitive performance. And we've seen that similarly on certain cognitive functions like attention and memory, maybe not in other ones like spatial orientation. We haven't seen that U-shaped correlation, but we certainly have seen it for people who sleep too little or over 10 hours or something. We see that same correlation. In terms of associations and stuff relating to cognitive impairment and so on, those are much more privy to the studies that are like 22-month studies, 2-year studies, at least 1-year studies. So we're not in a position to report on that, but it's certainly the most important thing. I think Alzheimer's is so important because it's the most costly disease out there. It's one of the most scary ones. And, Alzheimer's disease drugs are not coming out. They keep on failing the approval rate. It's a 99% failure rate, and they cost 5 times more than any other drug. So we're in a really bad shape when it comes to aging, and we're going to be demographically very predisposed to an older population as we march on closer to 2030, where they're going to outnumber children for the first time in history in the US, for example. So it's really important.
Agreed. And, coming from a family where there's a history of Alzheimer's, I applaud the work that you all are doing. It's phenomenal. And I think, I can't wait to see as these studies start to progress and mature, what kind of information you're capturing and the ways in which we can utilize that to really make a significant difference. So thank you for all of your work. I'm fascinated by it. Like I said, we could talk forever. Unfortunately, we're running out of time at the moment, but, we'll connect more in coming days, and I think this would be a great session to have a follow-on around with regards to some of the information that you've presented. There's so much to unpack here. Thank you
so much for having me.
Absolutely. I think there's Arome. You're back.
Thanks a lot, guys. It was really great being on the call. It was really great, the opportunity to share this with your community.
So I have one last question. Can you hear me?
Yes, sure.
We can hear you.
Okay, so with your current solution being based in VR, right? Most especially regarding developing nations, the cost of a headset is quite a lot out here. Any plans to go AR, especially to serve this market?
AR. Well, I mean, I guess everyone has their own opinion about what AR is, but I think hardware iteration and on the emerging tech, Gartner cycles, it's way behind VR in terms of accessibility and ability to actually foster the experiences we're creating. We have tried to use it on Magic Leap's first device, horrible. I'm not sure we're there yet. I think 5G needs to roll out before AR becomes even possible to have the right gear and sophisticated hardware. I can't talk seriously about it yet. It sounds like it's like talking about Minority Report. I think it will take at least 5 more years before we see VR AR headsets reach the level of sophistication that we would require for them to be, take our Unity-based games and move it to AR. I hope I'm wrong, but usually our estimates and forecasts are always way too ambitious. I think 5 years is actually ambitious as hell, even if it sounds like too much. But maybe Apple will release next year something really cool. I doubt it. I think it'll be very limited to like helping you navigate your bicycle ride, not be able to play sophisticated AR brain training games. But ultimately, where do I see my company in 10 years? I see it as an AR first company. It's just, the road to AR is paved through VR.
Great.
And the headsets, and the AR headsets are probably really expensive once they come out, by the way. I think they're going to be like way more than $300 for a VR headset, top of the line Quest 2. I don't think your AR headset's going to be cheaper. I think they're going to be like 5 times more expensive, especially initially.
True. So I have a question. Ryan is asking, what engine was used to build your solution?
Unity.
Israel.
I love Unreal Engine, but finding developers is much more difficult. And still, Unity is about 3/4 of the market in terms of representation of the content you see out there. I've tried working with Epic and trying to see how we can work with them and stuff, but they're pretty hard to work with as far as my experience is. Unity are really, really great to work with in terms of their team, in terms of the developer support and so on.
Great. Awesome. Jennifer, we're good?
I think we're good. Yeah, like I said, there's a million questions we could ask, but I think we're out of time for today. So this is a good one to maybe think about for a follow-on series. Amir, thank you so much for your time and your great energy. Keep it up. Keep pushing.
Make sure the call is in the morning for me, and I'll always have, or this time of day, and I'll be happy to have this energy. I'm a horrible
we'll keep that
person
in mind for future sessions.
Yeah, and I'm coming for that. I'm coming for that session, right?
Thanks a lot. Have a
Thanks,
great day.
Amir.
Have a great weekend. Be
Have a
safe.
great day.
Yeah. Right. Awesome. Great guy. So thank you all for watching. We'll be switching on to our next speaker in a couple of minutes. We have Hannah, and also she'll be sharing her own insights on XR for health support, especially for children support in hospitals, which is quite nice. Right. So do join us for the next session. Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone. See you soon.